Let's be real, sometimes our relationship with family members aren't easy. According to a U.S. survey by the Cornell Family Reconciliation Project, over a quarter of adults reported being estranged from a family member. Our next guest is author Fern Schumer Chapman. I talked with Fern about how to navigate this holiday season while dealing with a family rift.
Well, I had been in a lot of pain for many decades because my brother and I had no relationship. And I blamed myself. I ruminated. I wondered what I could do to fix it. And about 8 years ago, my brother got into a really dark place. My 86-year-old mother at that time begged me to intervene. And I was very nervous about this because I didn't know whether I could trust him. And so I tried to find books on this, and there really wasn't much out there. So I actually took notes through the entire experience and wrote the book that I was hoping to read at that time. I think it's really important to recognize that sibling estrangement ripples through a life. And so it affects all sorts of aspects, including self-esteem and your ability to trust others. So it's almost like a cancer that affects the entire person as well as the family.
What are some of the risk factors for estrangement?
Well, that was one of the shocks to me, that there actually were risk factors, and they're very identifiable. I often use the case of William and Harry to explain this. One is family trauma. The brothers experienced the death of their mother in a deeply traumatizing event, and they were very young, and that is a risk factor. Parental favoritism is another one. The monarchy presents the ultimate in favoritism because, of course, William will become king and Harry is relegated to a supporting role for the rest of his life. Poor communication skills. Of course, the monarchy is notoriously bad at settling their personal problems. So it's really important for parents to teach their children how to communicate, how to negotiate differences, because that's a huge risk factor. Families, values, judgments, and choices. This has to do with who you choose as a spouse. So in the case of Harry, he selected somebody who is far outside the family identity. And he may have done this intentionally. Maybe he was trying to create distance. But when you choose a partner who's way outside what the family can tolerate, you run the risk of estrangement. The big one right now is political differences. When there are vast political differences in the family, there's likely to be a big divide. Addiction and mental health issues is another one. When you are dealing with a sibling with mental health issues, it's very difficult. And that's part of my story as well. And finally, money becomes a very big problem.
During holidays, during family gatherings, what tips do you have, what ideas do you have for those that are dealing with estrangement or trying to reconcile?
Well, if you're dealing with estrangement, you might want to reframe your experience and try to remember all the times that you walked away from a holiday meal saying, I'll never do this again. You couldn't tolerate the drunk relatives and the political diatribes and your sister's dry stuffing and your brother's cutting remarks. So you might actually appreciate the fact that you're not in the mix of that kind of family trauma. And if you are completely estranged, there are all sorts of ways you can spend the long holidays. And you might think about helping out at a refugee center or a homeless center. It always feels better when you're helping somebody else. You might do things for yourself. I think the most important point is you want to plan the day. You do not want to run headlong into that day and get blindsided by the many hours where you have nothing to do. But, even if you're just cleaning a closet or doing those projects that you put off for the rest of the years. The other big thing is I think you want to delete your social media apps, because there you're going to be exposed to all of the events from which you're excluded. And that can be extraordinarily painful. You want to start new traditions and try to make memories for yourself. And I think the most important piece is to be grateful that you may not have to deal with, like I said, the family drama and the things that you do have in your life. Now, if you're actually going to encounter some of these difficult people at a family event, it's always good to have an escape hatch to recognize when the stress is getting high and you want to remove yourself. And, ask questions rather than answering questions, because when you ask questions, you actually have a little more control over the direction of the conversation.